Hello, we are
Hi.
live. Okay, so welcome to another night of Artist Conversations. Tonight we have CL Martin with us. And for those of you who have not had the amazing opportunity, CL Martin is an amazing portrait and drawing artist that you can see some of her artwork behind her right there. So I'm sure you've seen it around town. And I do have her Instagram at the bottom scrolling across. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Courtney. My artist name is CL Martin. I've been using that since 2003. Um, I draw people. I draw. The main thing I want to focus on in my drawings and get across to a viewer would be human emotion. Um, I want the figure I draw to be almost seem like they're real, like the viewer could almost barely interact with, um, almost interact with them as if they were real. Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
mean, your skill level of the photorealism on it is like, I don't want to say that it's a photograph because that's always really hard to decide because when you get really close, like you can see all the mark making that you have,
Yeah.
like and everything that's there. And I mean, you very much like make sure that you tell us that it's a drawing. Like there's nothing about this that's like, I'm a photorealistic photo redrawn, like
Yeah.
a drawing, a highly
I have a. I actually don't like photorealistic work, just because it's too referential to photography, and I want it to still be a drawing. Um, and making it photorealistic has never been a goal of mine. It doesn't matter to me. I'm trying to just capture the person, as much as I can, or the emotion. There isn't really a person. They're more kind of made up, even though they're drawn from real people, or even parts of real people. Because my process is a little involved.
Well, what do you mean it's involved?
Um, I I have a huge database of like thousands and thousands of photos on a separate drive. It's a terabyte. And they're just photos I've collected from the internet. The internet is an integral part of my work. Um, some of them are models, some of them are historical photographs, some of them are just objects. Um, maybe hats and stuff, or style a mustache or something. Um, And when I'm going about to make a drawing, I actually sketch on Photoshop, and I take parts of different photos and I put them together into a figure.
Oh my God, you're totally Frankenstein.
And I have said that before. Um, and anyway, I put them together, and then I print it out and I draw from it. Sometimes it's only like two different photos of the same person. Sometimes it's like maybe 4 or 5 different photos of 5 different people, and I just put the arms on and the and then when I draw it, I make it seem like a whole figure. But I was thinking about going forward. I wanted to make the figure more disjointed, just as a possible experiment.
So when you start putting everything together, like in Photoshop and stuff, do you start working out your composition there, or do you
Yeah,
start actually like
exactly. I would put the composition there. If I'm going to add color, I do it there. Yeah.
you even go as far as color and everything?
Yeah.
Oh, crazy. Okay,
I do
so
a lot of, I mean, I'm mostly black and white, but since I've been studying graphic design, I'm adding color more confidence to use it.
but you have a fine arts background before your graphic design.
Yeah, I went to MCAD. I graduated in 2004. I had done a semester abroad in Florence, which was really interesting. But the most awesome thing about Florence and even all just being in Italy was seeing art in person, Renaissance art, but you know, all kinds of different art. Yeah, so I majored in painting, oil painting. But once I graduated, I stopped oil painting because I never had a studio. I didn't have, you know, the right air intake flow, whatever you call it.
For the non-oil painter people out there, what does that mean to have a studio for oil painting?
Oh, it's oil painting is really toxic. Not only the pigments of the paint, and it's also really expensive. But the fumes of the turpentine that you use to wash your brushes with, and then you use a medium with oil to make it thick or thin. I mean, you can experiment, but it's a mixture of turpentine and what's that stuff called?
Linseed oil? No.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, linseed oil. You can use some different stuff, but that's the basic formula. And I just I can't do that in just like my own apartment or my own house or something. It really has to be done in a studio. Plus, cleaning the brushes, you have to do in turpentine. And so you end up having these cans or jars of turpentine sitting around with old paint in them, and you have to take them to the toxic waste dump. You can't just throw them away because it's toxic stuff.
Do you think that if you would ever want to go back to doing oil painting if you had the space? No.
No. No, I definitely love drawing. Drawing was really my main passion. I just didn't major in it because I thought, you know, maybe I should do something more formal, painting. So, yeah, but definitely drawing.
But now you're moving on. Well, I shouldn't say moving on. It's not like, you know, it's you're leaving one medium into another, but now that you're back in school and you're going into graphic design.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
How long have you been studying graphic design then?
1 semester, and then I have 1 semester to go.
So you're almost done.
So it's just an AA degree. It's not like a, you know, BA or I have a BFA, like I said, and then I'll have an AA degree, and I have a certificate in graphic design core, you know. So, but I mean, I've used Photoshop a lot. It didn't used to be subscription. You used to be able to just, you know, buy it for $1,000.
I know.
Or have your friends fucking steal it for you.
Yep.
You know, and use it that way. But I've just always loved playing with stuff digitally. So.
But I mean, like, even if you just say, like, the way that you're saying it is, it's an AA, you know, like, I kind of think that there's something in there that's a leftover fine arts school thing where it's like, well, the BFA was so important to, like, get on that level of being like, and now you have completed this fine arts, but, like, what you're doing is just in addition to, because, like, like, no matter, like, I think, like, in other career paths, and that's a weird thing to say because, like, you know, artists aren't necessarily a career path, but, like, as an artist, you never stop learning.
Oh, like, yeah, as a human being, you never stop learning.
Oh, true, but like as an artist, like if there's something that you want to learn, you can be like, you know what, I want to start pursuing ceramics or 3D or like, you know, any other type of creative outlet. Like it never has to just be one thing. You're always allowed to keep reinventing yourself and adding. So really, it's not. It's like you just are just going to keep leveling up with everything that you do, and it's like, you know, is this something in our artist brains that like we need to like start puzzling out like more colors and shapes and like dimensions and everything?
Yeah. Well, there are some restrictions depending on your income. You know, like I'm not going to do ceramics. I can't afford to rent a studio. I can't do all that stuff. But as artists, you can find materials, hopefully, that are that you can get easily. Paper, pen, even just paper, like lined paper and a pen, and that's it. I mean, I've seen great pieces of art done with the most simple materials. So,
but your materials are not exactly simple. I mean, like, you have really fancy paper, and charcoal isn't necessarily.
the paper is the most expensive thing. The paper is paramount to how the book works, actually. And it's Arches French paper. It's expensive. It's imported. I've been looking for paper alternatives for the last year right now that I've drawn on different kinds of paper. But there's some paper that I used in art school that was cheaper, and I was like, I'm going to switch to that, but it's been discontinued. And yeah, I'm addicted to Arches.
I mean, like, I've had the privilege of like holding your pieces, so I know how thick that paper and how durable that is. And I don't think people realize that, like, it's almost like fabric. Like,
yeah,
it's
the Arches hot press is a lot like fabric. It's really tightly woven. It's got a lot of weight to it. I've been buying the thinner weight now just because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. But if I add paint or add a lot of water, I don't want necessarily the paper to be warped when you frame it or hang it. But yeah.
How do you stop it from warping?
You don't really.
You frame it?
I mean, the thicker the paper, the less it warps, but it's a lot more expensive the thicker the paper.
So, I mean, like, your pieces are quite large. So, like, why that large and not something that's like smaller to save on like space and paper?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I do. There's a standard size for the Arches paper. You can buy it in reams, like a whole roll, but it's pricey. I just draw that size because that's just the size that the paper comes in, and I've kind of stuck with the same formula. All my drawings are the same size. I don't have much room for anything larger. I did experiment with gluing the paper or drawing to canvas, but that's problematic. Sometimes I rip the paper in half and do like a portrait or something that's, just like a head or something.
So out of curiosity, like, like when you buy like the thing with like hot dogs and buns, like there's 10 packages or 10 in the hot dogs and then like 8 buns, does that paper fit perfectly into standard size frames?
No.
I knew it.
It never does. It never does. You have to cut it down or, it's such a pain in the ass. Or mat it. You get a mat. Like I go to Mindhills, get a cheap frame, but they're actually not that cheap. They're like $45, the nice ones. And then you got to buy a mat and you mat it, but it doesn't really fit. And yeah, the framing is the hardest part for sure.
I've been thinking about asking like somebody that has like a framing background or something to give us all a big tutorial of like, can you give us some basic framing tips, please? Because
well, Benja, I think he used to work at Michael's.
Who did?
Benja.
Oh, did he? Oh, I'm
yeah.
Later. I feel so bad for asking.
I also know some artists who go to estate sales and they just collect old frames because they're cool. And I have some old, weird, interesting frames, one of a kind, unique, or whatever. But I can never bring myself to use them because I'm like, I don't want to sell it.
There's so much like I had to get rid of a box of frames recently that I was like, you've literally been sitting here for like years. Like it's time to go. Like if you're not going to use them in the next year, you're leaving. You're just done. But and then. So with the type of materials that you use, you're using mostly charcoal, right?
Charcoal, graphite, a lot of different kinds of graphite and charcoal. There's a really wide variety of tools that you can use just for black and white drawing.
So, because it looks so, like all of your drawings always look so black. Like your blacks are black.
Thanks. That's something I've actually been working on because since maybe a decade or so, my drawings used to be very high contrast. Oh, my friend Susie said the Arches paper fits into Euro frame sizes. IKEA frames. Actually, that's kind of funny. I didn't get some IKEA frames. Anyway, my drawings used to be like pretty low contrast, and I was just using graphite, and then I just decided to, punch it up.
So when you're using all the materials you've had, because I know that you mix stuff. Like I've seen you do like a little bit of everything, like in that experiment. Well, first off, can you explain to people that maybe this isn't their area? Like I feel like there's always like you can use this with this, but you can't use this with this.
Yeah, you can only use basically water-based materials with each other. And oil-based materials like oil paint or oil sticks or, certain spray paint and stuff. You can only use it over water-based materials, but if you put water-based materials on top of oil-based materials, then it will crack apart. It will decay. That's what I was told.
So like, have you done graphite to charcoal to paint or like ink?
I generally don't put paint on top of charcoal.
Okay.
Because charcoal is really not charcoal, graphite. It's really slick, and it also depends on if it's drawn on paper or canvas or another material. But paint, like water-based paint and graphite together, I try not to put it on top because
so you have your artwork that's behind you right now. I don't know if I might be able to get like some of the, some of the names of the people that are there, at least the titles, but can you start showing us some of the work and like telling us a little bit about each one or like what material you've been using for like that particular piece? Or point to it?
We can start with, this is the opposite. We can start with this one.
Perfect. You did it so great. So Vanna
White. That was from a model. It's a couple different photographs of her. And I put her head on another shot of her body. I just really wanted to experiment with drawing tattoos on skin and wanting it to look like actual skin,
right?
In black and white, which I've been practicing, and this one actually turned out really well. How I did that.
It's great, and that is really a hard thing to do. Like anything that's like scars, tattooing, or like even like and like all of that to actually make it look like it's there.
That actually, this drawing took the most time I've ever spent on a drawing recently. I do these fast. I usually like to do them in like maybe 4 days. Not 4 days, 4 hours over a couple of days.
Shut up, Courtney. These take you 4 hours?
8 hours.
8. So
8. Yeah, sometimes 8, sometimes yeah, but not very long.
But like
my mind moves way too fast and I just can't.
are you adding in the composition with the Photoshop and then like getting the paper and like all of that?
No, that's not. I mean, the actual act of drawing takes like 4 hours of completing it. But the act of, putting it together on Photoshop and thinking about it and moving it around constantly, that takes a lot longer. And sometimes I have to think about it for even like a month sometimes. So
still, so roughly like 8 hours for a drawing. That's incredible with what you have. But like, how often?
This one took me longer because of the tattoos.
Right. So like, how often are you actually like up against those papers, like nose to the grindstone, getting those out?
Yeah, mostly I'll draw for about 4 hours at a time.
But like, how many days a week?
I don't know. I haven't drawn for a while. Well, a couple months. When I'm going to school, I was drawing a lot, and I would just do it on the weekend when I got my homework done.
So, like, when you're drawing these pieces, and like, first off, you've been drawing, or like, when do you think you started drawing?
When did I start drawing? Forever ago, when I just like kicked my way out of the womb.
You found the charcoal, and you're like,
I found the charcoal, and yeah. My mother was an art history major, and she, really encouraged my brother and I have an older brother, to make art constantly. It was just what we did all the time. My brother was a great artist. When we were growing up, I just thought he was the best. And I learned a lot from him, actually, but he doesn't do art anymore. He pretty much stopped when he was 15.
Why?
I don't know. I think, you know what it was? It was an art class that he took, and he hated the teacher. It was like standard high school art class, and hated the teacher. They did not get along, and he almost flunked out. And that was it. He never made art again.
But he could still do it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, like, just because that he hasn't done it for a while doesn't mean that he couldn't go back to it. And he probably fully supports what you're doing, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it makes me mad. I want to be like, okay, every art teacher out there, listen real hard. Like, don't ruin other people's like art dreams, please. Thanks.
Teachers can be problematic. There could be really, bad ones. There could be really great ones. That's a complicated topic, but I was lucky. I had an amazing middle school art teacher, and she was so awesome.
Do you remember her name?
Free to call. And then in high school, I also had an amazing art instructor, so I was lucky.
And then what about now? While you're getting your graphic design stuff, do you think that you have amazing teachers that are helping?
Oh yeah, great teachers. Every teacher's been great. It's almost arguably better than NCAT. Don't tell Karen Worth.
But I mean, like, there's something there to be said that, like, we learn from each other, from what we're doing, like from artist to artist, like so much. It doesn't matter if it is like in an organized teaching setting, like you can teach one another what you're doing and inspiring, or, I've talked about this with people, that there was a really bad critique I got like probably like 15 years ago that made me stop doing something in my artwork. That it's silly because, like, as soon as I verbally said it out loud to somebody else, I realized how stupid it was.
Yeah.
I was like, this person said a really bad thing about my artwork that made me stop doing artwork. But I took it.
Critiques are really difficult.
Yeah.
The first time I started doing it, well, of course, because we were both in art school, I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But then they become more standard and you get used to them. But at first it was like brutal.
Well, and I think that people have heard me talk about it before, that like, critique can be really amazing, but how people deliver their critique can be really terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you actually doing? Are you sitting there like just like talking and not giving anything that's going to help this artist like do better?
Mm-hmm.
Like, then why are you even critiquing? Move
Yeah.
aside, but that's
A lot of that can depend on the person leading the critique, like if they're a teacher or a person of, I don't know, like a person up in the arts community, and then there are peers just critiquing. The person leading the critique can really set the mood and set how it's going to go. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had teachers that were really bad at it and really good. So,
but what do you think about like, because I think about like like I went out and I was like, I need to go find my own people. Like, I need to find people that are going to do dumb, nerdy, like art stuff with me. And I just have to like put those other humans aside because they're just not my people.
right.
And then you go out in the world and like that still happens in different types of art organizations. Like, you go in and you're like, well, this doesn't feel right. Or, and that can be really disheartening for like new artists to come and like talk and like figure out what they're doing if they're not being like received well, if immediately they're getting those bad critiques or
Yeah.
like being turned off in a lot of different ways. And I don't know, it's just like, how many people in the universe stop doing things and making great artwork because somebody told them they weren't good?
Yeah.
Or they could have done something to be better,
Yeah.
But
it's just like being an adult. It's like finding your right group of friends or groups of friends, like a clique. It's, cliques from high school. It never goes away. I mean, you try to surround yourself with people who you can talk to and get along with and have a lot in common. Sometimes have some in common at least. But yeah, I mean, trying to find the right arts collective or movement or group is like that.
So we just have to keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing process.
But I really want to see the piece behind your head.
Oh,
that one with the red sun behind it.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a little bit of a departure because that one was more informed by graphic design. I was playing with Photoshop and making weird shapes out of the clothing. And I did the color on Photoshop and then just mimicked it, And the weird things behind her head, the gender doesn't actually matter in this case. Well, it doesn't matter normally, but it's just an androgynous figure. The things behind her head are actually Caslon letters. So I was experimenting with warping serif font, and it's just this turned into this weird abstract shape.
That's so sexy. I just can't. What? Shut up. I mean, like, already, like, I'm in love with all of your negative space, and like when you say that, like even before you going to graphic design, like I've been seeing you with all the like your negative space is just as important as like your figure that you have. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, on top of it, let me bring all of this art history and now extra graphic design in it. It's like,
yeah, art history is really important to me, and history in general. I just read about it a lot. I mean, everything I can. It's fascinating, but when I was in art school, the concept of negative space was the first time I heard it, and in a drawing class, and I consequently heard it in an art history class, particularly with Japanese art, and I was like, wow, I hadn't even thought about that. And then with the graphic design lessons, you really get into the Gestalt psychology, and negative space is paramount to web design, to posters, any kind of media. But people don't notice it in general unless you read about it. But the negative space involved in Gestalt is really important for how and where you want someone to look in any kind of designed space.
Can you point on one of your drawings, like what negative space is, just in case there's people that may not like understand that?
Oh, sure. Just anything that's like white or not the figure, like negative space. It would be parts of the white paper. It's a lot of times it's white, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It can be black or colored, So,
I mean,
I think this. Wait, I'm like opposite. Piece I did with the aqua hair.
Yeah.
Is a big negative space. Oh, and this one. I'm okay. This one, the negative space was really paramount to how it looks. It's how I put it in the frame and stuff. And studying Japanese art is definitely a big influence and part of that. In fact, European artists didn't really get it until they discovered and pillaged Japanese art.
And then all of a sudden negative space started happening in their artwork more.
Yeah, and flat space where there's no shadows.
So like what time of art history would that be that they started doing more negative space? Because now I'm going to go look for it the next time I go to a museum.
Well, the Edo Japan, this was before they opened up to the West.
Okay.
There was a period where they did ukiyo, and that means literally floating world, and everything was very graphic and flat, and everything was off center. It was just, for them, it looked normal, and they would use these drawings. They're not drawings; they're prints, mostly prints. They would use them to wrap food in. They were originally made just as packaging. To wrap the food in, their fish, their everything they got from the market. They get their food out and then they read it look at it like a comic book almost. But then when the Japanese let the Dutch in, which they later regretted, their art quickly became almost like a Japan a fad. It's where wow, look at this weird art, and it influenced fashion, Parisian fashion. They started kind of dressing like geishas and stuff. And that would have been, what's that? I think like mid 1800s. Yeah.
It's okay. We can look up the date later out, with all of that. But what else do you have down there? Do you have more drawings around you at the bottom?
Yeah. Well, this one, this is actually like a proper portrait. Just because I was really interested in this woman and her life. She was a French kind of wild child chanteuse and model, and she did everything. In late 70s, early 80s, Paris and New York. And this No, this with the yellow is her as well. She's like a muse. She was a big muse for a lot of artists back then too. She's just interesting. And yeah.
So when you start working on a piece, like, and you know, just from like the things that I've seen you post, like you post so much about who they were, what they were doing, the history behind it. Like you have a lot of research that goes into every single one of these drawings.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm kind of a research nerd.
yeah.
I love to, well, learn like all the time. And the internet is ripe for, you know, doing all kinds of different research, collecting all kinds of different images. It's fun. If I have time, I do it as like a hobby.
So what was her name? This muse.
Edwige Belmore. She died in 2015.
Oh.
And she was like, she knew everybody, Andy Warhol, all that crap.
And have you ever met any of these people that you have created?
I'm trying to think.
Because I know that you got a shout out from one model, right? From someone a while back.
Oh, I did. I was drawing male ballet dancers for a while. Just because I loved that was actually my first foray with serious anatomy. I wanted to get better in anatomy. And I was a ballet dancer for a long time. Not professional, but, you know, studied it. And my mother ran a ballet school, all that crap. And I did actually meet some of the ballet dancers that I drew, because I went to London to stay with a friend of mine, and met one who I drew. He's amazing. And then I met one in Moscow. I went to Moscow to stay with a friend of mine to see all the ballet, and I met the dancer who I was drawing a lot. And yeah, that was amazing.
So that's like, so you do all this research, you figure out everything about their lives, and then you start like collecting and creating this Frankenstein piece in Photoshop. And then it becomes like this hyper focus of like every single piece of knowledge that you have that then you get to present to everybody else. And like, you've told me that you're like, I want people to like come to their own conclusions when they're like looking at my artwork and everything that's there. But like, is it ever disappointing if you're like, no, that's not what I was doing? Or like, what did you say that?
I used to be disappointed a while ago, but then I thought, you know, you just can't control what other people think.
Sure.
And I decided to open up and kind of, if people tell me what they think it is, they're like, is this, oh, does that mean this? And I just, you know, think about it in a different way and go, wow, that's really interesting. That's an interesting interpretation.
Right.
Some of the figures and people that I draw, even though the face is from like a actual person and with maybe different body parts from someone else, they become like a character. They're not a literal portrait. Some of them are literal portraits, but some of them are just characters that I've made up in my brain.
And your research.
Yeah.
They're probably not even exactly the same person anymore. You've made them something different.
Yeah. Well, I want the main thing that I want a viewer to take away from the work is the emotional connection with a flat piece of paper. I mean, because it's intense for me, and making them is really personal and emotional, and they're loaded with all kinds of stuff from me. And if people can at least connect with the drawings on an emotional level, then you know, that's all I really want. that's the main meaning. Like, as if the person were, or they could potentially be real, but they're not.
Right. It's like I don't know, it just reminds me of, like, I don't know if you ever watched Batman.
Yeah.
I'm a big Batman person, so I loved Batman, especially the animated series. And in his Batcave, he had this long hallway of, like, all the pieces of every villain that he ever fought that, like, that he would have to walk by and, like, go into his deep, dark Batcave and, like, like, there was always that, like, did Batman create the villains or did villain create the Batman, back and forth. And it's like, I'm seeing you with these characters that you've made, and it's like this push and pull where it's like, they've inspired people and they've been muses in their own sense. And then, like, you're taking it to, like, a whole other level, and, like, they're Frankenstein portraits of, like, what you demand of them. Like,
yeah,
you're going to be this story that I find important in the world. And
that's one of the main reasons why I choose performers usually, is because they're really conducive to that kind of projection.
Yeah. I mean, like,
I have asked real people. Like, I've met people on the street, and I've gone up to them and said, "I'm an artist. Here's my business card. I think I'm just taking your photo and drawing for me." And none of them get back to me. They're not performers. They're just like normal people, and they don't. I mean, if someone did that to me, I'd be like, "Fuck no, get away from me, you freak."
I'm surprised not one of them has gotten back at all. Really?
No.
So
well,
I would post
use, like, people that at this point that my Instagram algorithm finds, because they find images of people or things based on what you've looked at in the past. And so, yeah, a lot of it is now just done by an algorithm. I'm like, wow, who's that?
You're like, thank you. Thank you, supercomputer. I really needed that in my life.
It's odd because they're drawings, but, like, photography and social media and the internet are an integral part of what I do.
So how much, because, like, I think that people don't realize, like, as an artist, like, you're like a small business, like, all the time. And you are your own social media person, your own promoter, like, all of that stuff is
the hardest part.
So just for, the space aliens out there that have never met you or don't know what an artist is, like, how much time do you spend doing social media and trying to get yourself out there?
Well, it depends. I don't actually spend very much time trying to get myself out there. I'm kind of I don't know.
But you do a lot of research for the work that you have.
Yeah. In terms of, I think promoting yourself on social media is probably the easiest, but I'm generally just a real, in art school, when I graduated in 2004, there wasn't really, there was the internet, but it really wasn't used very much. And there was no social media for promotion. You had to do it. You had to put together these packets of, like, printouts of photos that you've taken and slides. And it was just, it's really expensive. It's a pain in the ass. And then you send them out to galleries, and hope that the gallery person will see them and be like, "Ooh, you're the one." But, that never happens. Yeah, I don't know. It's what you really have to do if you want to be an artist in the West, particularly. You have to be very socially adept, and you have to be socially ambitious. You have to be really social, because it's all about building connections with other people, more powerful people. And that's just not something that I'm good at. And if I do it, sometimes I feel guilty, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to, I don't know, kiss ass. Well, it's difficult. That's been the most difficult part for me being an artist, is doing that.
I keep wondering, there's so many possibilities right now with everything that's been going on with the pandemic, and it's like, as well as like, the way that our city is changing with Black Lives Matter and everything. Like, there's going to be a lot of changes that happen, and the one thing with artists is that we have the ability to move and adapt with change with what's happening. I mean, we could have all sorts of possibilities. I mean, like, you and I could be doing this for the next year. It could just be virtually, art. And then is this the socializing that we're used to? No.
Well, the problem with Western art, I think, is, and it's been this way since the Catholic Church was ruling over everybody, is that art was something, the taste of it and the value of it was determined by who was in power, who had wealth. And it still is that way today. And I think art should be more decentralized. It should be, and it should be everywhere. And sometimes the Western definition of art is it's closed off. I mean, it closes a lot of people off. And it was kind of written and founded by white men, and it's been that way since the 15th, 14th century. Let's move on now.
Well, what do you think it could be like?
Well, in the history of like a lot of Eastern art, the idea of an individual artist wasn't a thing. It was it was more a group effort, and an artist didn't sign a work like I did this. It was done by a group, and they didn't even necessarily sign it. But it was so integral to everything they looked at, how they lived, how they functioned, that it wasn't something that was put on a pedestal and artists were kind of, ooh, you've had like this amazing education and stuff. It wasn't like that. It was more like artisanal, and I don't know, it could be that way again, and it is in some cities and some groups. But yeah, I have issues, even though my art looks really Western. I have issues with how it's structured, the art world and all that stuff. So.
I mean, we have the ability to change it. I guess, like, I would hope that, that the connections that we have with one another, like as artists, like during even though this very like distant time, like physically distant time with everyone, that like we can still find ways of connecting. Because like, when I graduated from college, like I graduated during a recession.
Yeah.
And there was like, it was really shitty, but like there was also some amazing things that came out of during that recession, is that people ask questions like, where is this coming from? I'd rather support somebody from Etsy that has their small shop than going somewhere else, and then we had craft brewing and like all these other kind of boutique shops, and like kind of the bigger name brands were, not all of them were going away, but they realized they needed to humanize themselves a lot more if they wanted to have any connection with their audience.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of a return to local communities, local stuff, because stuff being brought in from elsewhere, it's polluting,
Yeah.
In terms of food shipment and all kinds of things. So, yeah.
But what would, like, if you could have the most perfect pandemic portfolio through this, and like, at the end, I keep saying like, whatever this change happens, or like whenever this end is, and everything is very unknown,
Mm-hmm.
But if Courtney, through all of this, what would you want to take out of it, from at least being from an artist?
I don't know. I'll be able to answer that when it's over, and I've had like maybe a year to think about it. Sure. I'm really kind of I don't react. I have to overanalyze everything for months or years before I have an opinion. Or yeah, but it's certainly amazing and disturbing time right now. I think I'm fascinated with what artists did during the 2 world wars. And there was a debate at the time about what kind of work artists made. Like Matisse made, he kept doing his Fauvist kind of movement where they made beautiful, bright colors. All of this, the world's in shit and it's burning and everyone's dying and killing each other. Which the Fauvists were criticized heavily for doing that because they didn't make art about what was actually going on. But artists who did, their art was more political in nature. And just ever since then, there's just been this debate among Western artists about what do you do? What kind of work do you make during extreme times like this? I tend to shy away from political art. Maybe there's a hint at it for me, but I don't know. It's hard.
I mean, there's been people that have approached me that they're like, hey, do you want to come and do this thing? And I was like, I draw unicorns? Like, I don't know if that's helpful.
I know. I feel the same way. I mean, sometimes the stuff I'm insecure about my work is that sometimes I feel like it's too superficial, or but doubting your work is normal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think your work is superficial. I love your work. I love that it's a drawing. I mean, like everything in that, like you can see your hand in every piece that is in your drawing, and I love it so much.
Thank you for supporting me. You've been probably the biggest support for me in my career thus far. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Courtney. You were so welcome. That's really no, you've been doing amazing stuff all the time. Like your stuff is like so rich and heavy, and like I want to eat the paper.
Yeah. Good. That's the reaction I want from.
So one day when you're not looking, I'm gonna bite a corner.
My cat has done that actually. So.
But can you show us some more? Because we're almost at the end of our hour.
This was the last drawing I did. I was kind of trying to experiment with kind of abstracting the ear and making it weird. I don't know. It's like, oh, that'll look cool. What if I just add some magenta and smear it? This was an actual portrait. I'd say a proper portrait of the person who I drew in that one. It's just the French model. She's kind of interesting, but she has a really interesting face. And as a former model, I don't know, she's a DJ. She's interesting. I think she's hot. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely a Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The thing is that on the scrolling bar at the bottom, like I was like,
body collector,
body collector, and I was like, that's weird, and I was like, oh well, it makes sense to me, so I'll just go with it. So whatever. So,
I have some drawings planned that I want to do. I just wanted to wait,
Yeah.
Before I did them or shared them with the public.
What else you got? I want to touch your pieces through the internet. Let me just get in there and eat it.
This is probably my least favorite.
What?
I was gonna do it for the erotic art show, and then I did a different one that I liked, and this one's kind of. I'm always into the cabaret kind of vibe, marble and dancing and theater and all that stuff. And it was supposed to be like that.
So what is it about this that you're not into?
But
Because this one wasn't this one you didn't.
that I'm not into. That's a
Yeah.
really great question. Sometimes I can be really influenced by how many reactions I get on social media, which is really, I shouldn't. But my confidence can be really closely tied to how the public will react to a piece.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And nobody really liked this one, so it was like, okay.
We were just talking about like you like I changed some of my artwork because I got a bad critique that I'm still trying to be like, that's stupid. I can't even think of the person's name that gave it to me.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about being an artist too, is it is a big part of it is dependent on whether or not people like it.
Yeah.
Pure torture.
Yes. Well, I mean, like, okay, so we have this curiosity, we have this drive, we want to do these things, and it's there. And then we like create the things, and then it's like, you know, if social media didn't exist, it's like we're just like ninjas in the night that are like, and then you leave it somewhere and you can't sit with your audience all the time. But like actors and performers and like, you know, I've heard before that like comedians are sometimes some of the most depressed people because like if they aren't getting that immediate laughter from their audience right away, like you're down. And it's like that's
I actually used to be a performer with the ballet, and I did a lot of theater, and I thought about pursuing it professionally, but then I was like, am I that much of a masochist? So I went with art kind of about it. And I've always been fascinated with the performer mentality, but it is really difficult. It is almost like, abusive. But
the social media, that's your new audience right there. You know, like you are now the comedian that like if you're not getting your laughs, all of a sudden, you know, you're going to a darker place than you need to go.
Yeah, that happens. But also, I think as you get older too, that kind of gets better.
Yeah,
you have more just general confidence. Don't care as much what other people think. So it's an ongoing thing. But as I've gotten older, especially after the age of 35, it's like, wow, you know, I feel better. Because all that stuff just doesn't really matter. A lot of it doesn't matter.
I would like some more of it to slough away, honestly. I'll get there with it.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience?
You're getting a lot of love. That's what you're getting.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, I forgot to say my drink. I made whiskey ginger for your artwork. But I really wanted to make a Manhattan.
Yeah, Manhattan.
But I Sunday failed super hard.
Like I said earlier, when there wasn't public, I have had a Manhattan in Manhattan, and I only needed one because I was so strong, and it cost about $18. So that's my memory of Manhattan.
I think it would have fit very well because like everything is like, you know, sexy, high performance, like subject matter behind it. It's what I would perceive it as, but
yeah,
whiskey ginger.
Well, I certainly appreciate your feedback about it.
Yeah.
What platform online gives you the most feedback from people who see your art? Probably Instagram. But now social media, it used to be easier because there were less people using it maybe, and the algorithms were a little different, but it's trying to promote your work via hashtags, and it relies on how many people look at it, how many people comment, and how many people like it. So you want more people to like it and comment on it, because then it'll get seen by more people. That's how that algorithm works, and you're kind of a slave to it. I mean, there's only so much you can actually promote, and it's really dependent on how many people see it and then share it or talk about it or stuff like that, which kind of sucks, but it's better than not showing anything at all.
Right. So which piece on your Instagram did you get the most feedback from?
I guess, what was this one? Lately. Yeah, everybody liked this. This one got into a show in California.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Los Angeles.
Yeah. Exciting. Well, does anybody have any more questions? We just hit the hour mark. How did it feel?
Fine, great.
Yeah.
It's much easier than talking to like an audience.
Yes. Well, do you have like any secret more drawings that we could see before we go?
Not really. I have a bunch upstairs, like a stack like this, but those are from like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And they've gone into storage.
Will you lift up one that's below you just so I can see it for a longer time?
Oh, sure.
Because I'm a weirdo? Yeah.
This is another like tattoo.
I love it.
I thought about being a tattoo artist, but I don't have any tattoos. So my friends told me, you can't be one if you don't get tattoos. I don't even want one, but I like trying them.
I love the shadows with the florals in the background. That negative shapes. Eat it.
Yeah, this is inspired by Art Nouveau, because this tattoo is pretty Art Nouveau-ish.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of reacted to it here.
Yes. Well, Ms. Courtney, thank you for doing the artist conversations with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being part of my first pool of victims. So, yes, thank you. And then next week we're going to do Eric Lairbold.
Oh, great. So, yeah, I'm not from NCAT forever.
Yeah. So, besides that, later. Thank you.
Thank you, love.
Yay, excited. Okay. Bye. Happy Sunday. See you guys later.
Okay, bye.